Hello, America, and thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. Our fearless leader, Michael King, is out not necessarily enjoying Mardi Gras totally, because he's actually working, and we are grateful to have his leadership, and we wish him well during Mardi Gras. This hour is Made in USA, and our leader in this hour is Greg Owens himself, and we are really grateful for everything that he's teaching America about making things in the U.S. Greg, it's nice to have you.
It's great to be here. Today, I have a very special guest coming back, Mr. Jim Stuber. He wears a couple hats. One of them is he's working with the Coalition for a Prosperous America, and we're going to talk a little bit about the work that they're doing to advocate for Made in America products. He's also the author of a tremendous book, What If Things Were Made in America Again? Before we get with Jim, let me just give a quick shout out to our sponsor for this segment, Bond Products. For DIY carpet bonding, there's only one Instabond. You can find them at bondproducts.com. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Greg. It's great to be with you again.
So you're a busy guy these days. You're going to this Prosperity Summit, and you're going to give a speech on capital markets and other things representing the Coalition for a Prosperous America. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about what your presentation is going to be all about, starting with what the heck capital markets are and why is that so important?
Sure, I'm glad to. My interest in this, Greg, started as I was researching my book. It became evident that one of the main reasons, certainly the major reason, for all of our manufacturing going overseas and losing all those jobs was China, and how in 2001 we had made this terrible decision to let them into the World Trade Organization and give them normal trade relations, and then it made Ross Perot's giant sucking sound faint, because compared to what was going on in Mexico, China was just sucking, deindustrializing America, the West, and not only the industrialized West, but the global South as well. They didn't care if Nigeria had a clothing industry. They were going to come in there and sell their cheap dashikis and just let the chips fall where they may. So the China is just a bad actor on the world stage. They're trying to regain their place at the center of the universe, as they used to call it. And in the process, since they're communists, human rights have no place in any of this. So I'm sure our listeners are aware of the fact that in the Xinjiang region of China, the Uyghur minority, who are Muslims, have been being imprisoned and working in slave camps and having their organs harvested and who knows what. But they didn't stop there. And of course, we're familiar with Tibet, which even goes back farther. But they also have been surveilling their own citizens. And so they just are wiping out any vestige of religion. It's all the old, communist stuff. So the Chinese are a bad actor on the world stage in many ways, besides the fact, that they want to just take over the world, and so they've got this big military buildup going on as well. I think you and I have passed. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, and this relates to capital markets because, Rita was just talking with a couple individuals talking about the challenge of starting a business, launching a product, being an inventor, and you need money to do that. So not only have we opened up our markets by being these free traders and so-called free trade, which doesn't really exist, but we've opened up the possibility for them to raise money to fund dumping of products and to fund their military buildup and all these other things that you've talked about using U.S. capital markets. Isn't that right?
Exactly. That's exactly right. So that's the big irony of this is that we, the American investors, both institutional and individuals, are funding all of this activity. And as you said, not least of which is we're funding their companies that are competing with our inventors, our people trying to bring people to market. So the whole thing makes no sense. Why are we sending all this capital to China? That's kind of the question.
Well, the other thing that doesn't make any sense, and this is something that I found out about through work with you and CPA, is there are certain rules for U.S. companies when they list on the stock exchange. They have to provide information to investors so they don't get so they don't get ripped off. And there's a high degree of transparency that's required for that. In a lot of cases, Chinese companies don't do that. Is that correct? And has Wall Street just sort of turned a blind eye to that?
The answer is yes and yes, I'm afraid. I can't believe I'm saying that, but it's true. So, like, take the Alibaba IPO, one of the biggest ever, and they, our investors weren't even investing in Alibaba because the Communist Chinese Party won't let you do that. They set up something called a variable interest entity in the Caribbean, in the Caymans, for example, and our investors invest in that. So they have no real investor rights. And Alibaba doesn't have to give the same disclosures as are required. Now, Congress passed a law that ostensibly is requiring that now, but it hasn't really been effectively managed. But even
Right.
worse than that, those are the ones that are listed on our exchanges. But now, what we discovered through our work at CPA is that the Chinese stocks that are traded on the Shenzhen and Shanghai stock exchanges, you can bet they don't have any of those disclosures. And now all of those stocks, 5,000 of them, are now available to U.S. investors because they've been listed on indices that Vanguard and the like are selling in their products. So if you and I are in a Vanguard fund, it's very likely that we have no investor disclosure for these 4,000 Chinese stocks that are traded on Chinese stock exchanges.
Somebody like me that has a portfolio and lets my investment manager manage it, I could be invested in different stocks in national funds, small market cap, large market cap, and these
Mhm.
international funds, and you just have really no idea what you're actually investing in and if those companies are legitimate or not.
That's right. These indexes, they're just kind of pulling whatever the Chinese give them, and they're not doing any due diligence on these companies. They just list them on their index. Once they're on the index, Vanguard and BlackRock are content to take that index and include the stocks in their funds.
It sounds an awful lot like some of the things that happened in the past that caused the markets to collapse. Lehman comes to mind, right?
Well, yes, and the Chinese markets have been going down, down, down. So it's not like these have been good investments or sound investments. But the other thing we discovered in our work is, okay, so why are these guys doing this? Well, it's the Faustian bargain. They are licking their chops to be able to sell their investment products to those 600 million Chinese investors who make all their investments through the big Chinese banks. So CPA also discovered that there's this joint venture, if you will, going on between Vanguard and BlackRock and the like, and these big Chinese banks. And they're saying, well, we'll let you come in and sell your stuff to our retail investors as long as you list all of our companies on your exchanges, all of our companies that are in cahoots with the Chinese military.
Right, and it's not only retail investors like you and me with our 401ks and our and so forth. It's also pension funds and government pension funds and all sorts of investment money that's being poured into the markets that's finding their way to invest in these companies, is it not?
Yes. Now, there is a bright spot, and that is that the Federal Retirement Investment Board made a decision last year that they were not going to have these Chinese stocks anymore. And there are several states who have done that. But for the most part, most states still have these in their pension plans and private pension plans. So it's still a big problem.
All right. Well, we're going to have to take a quick break here. And when we come back, we'll shift gears and talk a little bit about some of the non-tariff barriers that are put on our companies as well, such as the requirement to have joint ventures. This is Home Talk USA. This is the Made in America Hour on the King Broadcasting Network. I'm Greg Owens. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
Hi, Frankie Boyer here, and I have one important message for you. Listen up. Vitamins are not as effective unless required mineral cofactors are present. And there is one unique complete vitamin product that has all the minerals necessary for vitamin and amino acids to work in the human body. It tastes great, and if you're like most people who try it and use it regularly, your life and health will change noticeably for the better. The product is called Beyond Tangy Tangerine, and there is nothing on the market that comes close to it. Most people who try it love it and notice dramatically better health and well-being almost immediately. Try it yourself and see if you agree that Beyond Tangy Tangerine should become a part of your life going forward. Order it at frankieboyerhealth.com. That's frankieboyerhealth.com, and change your life and health. frankieboyerhealth.com.
Welcome back, everybody, to Home Talk USA on the King Broadcasting Network. This is the Made in America Hour. I'm your host, Greg Owens, and I'm here with Jim Stuber. We'll get right back to Jim after I give a shout out to our sponsor for this hour, Lion Energy. You can go anywhere with portable power solar generators, and you can find them at lionenergy.com. Welcome back, Jim. You know, we were just talking about the unbelievable situation with Americans and pension fund investments actually funding the meteoric rise of China, not only their industrial rise, but their military rise. And that sort of transitions into something that's been featured on Fox that you wanted to talk about next.
Wanted to mention, Greg, that this first part of our work, we put out two reports. One was on Vanguard and FTSE Russell, and the other was on BlackRock and MSCI, their index provider, about how Wall Street's was funding, the CCP and the PLA. And
let me interrupt for just 1 second. Pardon me, but where do our listeners find that information? Do they go to the CPA website, or where can they find those reports?
Yes, in fact, thanks for mentioning that. The website is all one word: ProsperousAmerica.org. It's a nonprofit. So ProsperousAmerica.org, and you can poke around there, and you'll see these reports are there. Makes fascinating, if kind of angering, reading. And then the next report we did was on this joint venture that I just mentioned. It's called Inside the Wire: How Wall Street's joint ventures with the CCP are being funded by Americans. So Fox has picked this up, and that's great because it's helping to get the word out. But as we went along with this, we realized that not only were we funding China's military buildup, but we're funding their space program. And you can be sure that China's space program, like everything else they do, is not just, let's go out and explore space. It has a military dimension to it. The word for it is the military fusion strategy. And basically, China says to every company, everything you do is going to have a military dimension. You're going to share all your IP with us, and you're going to help us militarize. And so China isn't just going to explore the moon. You and I have talked about the South China Sea and how China has claimed the whole thing, and they took a couple of shoals down there that you could only see on high tide and made them into islands. And so first, it just shows you how China operates. First, claim it, and then militarize it. And we're sure that that's what they would do on the moon if they get there before we do. And so now we've discovered that, yes, indeed, there are a bunch of companies that are involved in the Chinese space program that we Americans are funding.
It's just unbelievable. I guess at the end of the day, what can we do about it? And better yet, what is being done about it?
Well, yes. I mean, there have been, as I mentioned, there have been a few successes like that pension thing. We were able to head off the Shein IPO. They're one of the worst human rights abusers, and so that IPO didn't come to pass. And there have been a couple of presidential actions in the first Trump administration. President Trump outlawed U.S. purchases of publicly traded securities of these military companies. And President Biden actually issued one against private equity investing in certain, high-tech technologies. But mostly the problem remains. And so we really are pushing for executive action and, more importantly, congressional action to basically outlaw a lot of this activity. We shouldn't be able to buy Alibaba through a VIE in the Caymans with no investor protection. And these Vanguard and BlackRock shouldn't be listing these, we call them A shares, these domestic uh, stock exchange China companies in their funds that they're selling to unwitting American investors. And so we've seen some of these bills introduced in past Congresses, but we really would like to see congressional action to really put a stop to some of these practices. It's totally there. Problem is that many of our members of Congress have been listening to Wall Street. If they were to go out and ask any of their constituents what they thought about this, you can imagine what they would say. But Wall
Well,
Street has had a loud voice on Capitol Hill.
yeah, and I when I first heard about this, it was at a CPA fly-in event. Roger Robinson made a nice presentation on it, and I went back to my investment guy. Won't mention his company, but it's one of the larger ones that is used. And he introduced me to something called ex-China funds, where they try and invest in companies that don't have any manufacturing, anything to do with China. It's not a perfect solution, but is that something you're familiar with as well?
Yes, it is. But honestly, it's not going to make much of an impact. It's like so many of us would like to buy American, and we make our little effort to buy American, but in the big picture, it's not really moving the needle. So to expect, and what are you going to do? I don't, you don't manage your pension fund. There's a manager who manages all that. And so it's a good thing for individuals to do. I recommend it highly that you talk to your broker and say, look, I want to be in ex-China funds. But it's certainly not going to move the needle in the big picture. We really need changes in policy because Wall Street has said, if this is legal, we're going to do it. If you want to outlaw it, outlaw it. So that's what we need to do. We need to outlaw it.
Yeah, right. And in the last couple of administrations, the people who have been at the Treasury Department, the heads of the Treasury Department, have really been friends of Wall Street and supporters of this effort that's been going on for years. I think we have a different game in town now. They all seem to be aligned on the same thought, and hopefully we'll be able to actually get something done within the next 4 years and clean up this mess and put an end to it. We're going to have to take another break here, but we'll be back very shortly with Jim for segment number 3 of our program and open up the conversation to some other topics. This is Home Talk USA, the Made in America Hour. I'm Greg Owens on the King Broadcasting Network. We'll be right back after these messages.
If you're trying to quit drinking or doing too many drugs, listen to me. You don't know me and we'll never meet. I had a problem like you once. I drank and used to party a little too much till it got out of control and almost ruined my life. I realized I needed help to fix my problem before it totally destroyed me. If you've tried to fix your drinking and drug problem and you know you can't do it alone, you need to call the National Treatment Advisors. They'll immerse you into a 30-day program to replace your old habits with new habits and totally change your life. And if you have PPO private health insurance, the entire program may be covered. Fix your problem right now before it gets any worse. Get clean. Call now and learn more. 800-296-0906. 800-296-0906. 800-296-0906.
Welcome back, everybody, to Home Talk USA on the King Broadcasting Network. I'm Greg Owens, and this is the Made in America Hour, here with Jim Stuber, talking about all things DC and how we're going to clean up our mess and get our jobs back to the United States. Before we get back with Jim, I want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors, Aztec Washer, revolutionary and innovative roofing products since 1968. Their motto is seal it right, seal it tight. You can find them at aztecwasher.com. Welcome back, Jim.
Thanks, Craig.
And I think we kind of wrapped up, and we did justice to talking a little bit about the investment problems that we're having and how we're actually funding some of the things that are causing our demise. Let's move on to maybe a little bit broader topic, and that is the new America First industrial policy and investment policy. Can't read my own handwriting here, sorry, but why don't you clean that up and take it from there?
Well, you mentioned at the end there that there's a new game in town, and that's an understatement. President Trump in his first administration had a lot of pushback from people like Steve Mnuchin, who were really Wall Street guys, and they just weren't ready to, put America first. So 2 weeks ago, the president issued a memorandum, I would call it a directive really, to all of his department heads, and it was titled America First Investment Policy. And he picked up from where he left off on that executive order I mentioned from his last administration. And he said, look, in his findings, I find that that China is funding this military buildup with our investment dollars, and that's got to stop. And he reaffirmed that executive order, and he mentioned a bunch of other topics that weren't included in the executive order that he once looked into. But the problem with this executive order, as welcome as it is that it's really a statement of intentions. And so it's up to his department heads to do something with this, and that could be changed even in the next administration. And so I believe that it's, and in fact, CPA believes that congressional action is going to be necessary to consolidate this, to fill in the blanks, and then to institutionalize it so that this stuff will be written into law and it becomes irreversible. So there is a congressional agenda that we need to pursue here for a true America First investment policy.
Right, and we're going to talk a little bit about the 232s, and the president of the United States is a president. He's not a dictator, and there are a lot of laws that we have on the books to preserve the separations of power that require you to go to Congress. But one of the key things about that is different about this administration, I heard. I was listening to the news the other night, and one of the people who had been in the prior administration says, well, geez, at this point in the first term, we were still trying to figure out where the light switches were in the White House. These guys prepared for 2 years for this because they knew they had a real good shot at it, and they're really hitting the ground running. And a big part of that is having not Steve Mnuchin, but people in each cabinet position on the same page, working towards the same goal, not fighting against each other and really obstructing progress. Isn't that right?
Yes, indeed. And I think that you see a lot more alignment this time around in the people that are staffing the president's cabinets. And it's very encouraging.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
And also, I think we do see a lot of alignment in the Congress, certainly among the Republican majority, as thin as it is. But it's still, but don't let me overstate that, because as I mentioned, Wall Street will be there with their attorneys looking to dilute and hobble this policy and do a workaround. But that said, there is a critical mass, even with Democrats who are in favor of this kind of policy that the president is espousing. And so I think we will see action. And I would encourage our listeners to really be in touch with their members of Congress to, for one thing, take these various blacklists we have and consolidate them all into one thing and say if a Chinese company is on a list that says we're not allowed to export technology to them, well, we shouldn't be allowed to give them money either. And so consolidate all of that and say those companies can't be owned by Americans. And then let's also go after those domestically traded Chinese companies because it's just full of companies that are supporting the Chinese military. And
Well, and
so
somebody
that
out there
should
might
not.
be thinking, what does this have to do with Made in America and the Made in America hour? Well, a lot of it is that we're shooting ourselves in the foot.
Right.
And we have to correct certain things down in DC to provide an opportunity for investors to invest in the United States and bring our jobs back. And I've always had the argument, and I talked about this years ago with people at the CPA flying. It's like, are we ever going to be able to convince the people on Wall Street to take their money out of foreign countries, mainly China, bring it back to the United States and invest in American manufacturing? And the first reaction I got was they kind of laughed at me. Well, I guess hopefully I'm going to have the last laugh because it seems to me like that's what's happening, right?
Well, yes, because they're going to keep doing it until they're not allowed to do it anymore. And so now, either by executive order by the president or by congressional action, we're going to say no. And there's two sides to it. One is we bring that money back and make it available. We also stop it from being given to Chinese companies who are benefiting from all these subsidies that the Chinese government gives them. How are we supposed to compete with that? And so let's just stop this unfair competition, bring our capital home, and let's invest in the American entrepreneur.
Right. And the entire coherent trade policy from Treasury through Commerce to OMB all comes together. You cut off the funding for your competitors, you put up some tariffs to protect your markets, and you create opportunities for American manufacturers. And that's where this thing is headed. Like you said, it's going to need to go to Congress. It's going to take some time, require some litigation. There will be some pushback. But I guess my message to Wall Street would be, if you're out there and you're looking at what's going on, the first people that jump in and really start developing American manufacturers are going to be the ones that are going to win out big. You don't want to be late to the game on this one.
That's good advice.
Okay, so what else are you going to talk about at this Prosperity Summit that our listeners would be interested in hearing about?
Well, one thing would be bringing our generic drug manufacturing back to America. As it stands now, 90% of our prescriptions are generic drugs, and most of those are made in India with Chinese components. And so we'll be there talking about, as you said, let's put up some tariff barriers against this unfair Indian competition, and let's make some incentives for American manufacturers to jump back into that game.
Yeah, I had Rosemary on the program not too long ago talking in depth about that issue. It's a fascinating episode. If any of the listeners go to Home Talk USA and go back in the archives, look for is Rosemary going to be at the summit as well?
I don't know.
Okay, well, you can hear about that and you can read about it in her book, China RX. And let's close out the show. You wrote an interesting book that I think everybody should be reading. It's called What If Things Were Made in America Again? For those of you out there who haven't listened to Jim, he's been on the program several times. He wrote a really comprehensive book that takes you all through his what he called light bulb moment, what got him interested in the subject, and then he really researched it. He learned a lot and comes to the conclusion that what we've done to ourselves is just horrific. We need to bring these jobs back home and start making it in the USA again. So, Jim, thank you very much for being on the program.
Oh, Greg, it's great to be with you. I've really enjoyed walking this journey with you. You've been one of the most committed to all of this, and I think a new wind is blowing, and I'm cautiously optimistic.
Okay, well, good luck at the Prosperity Summit, and I hope you make that wind blow even harder. We'll be back shortly with segment 4, and we'll have Jim back another time to elaborate and tell us how he did down there.
Tired of struggling just for your customers to notice you? Your business needs Constant Contact. Constant Contact's award-winning marketing platform has helped millions of small businesses stand out, stay top of mind, and see big results. With powerful tools like email, SMS, social media, and events, you'll say the right thing at the right time to sell more, raise more, and fast-track growth. Plus, everything's backed by Constant Contact's expert live customer support. So get going and growing with Constant Contact today. Try it free at ConstantContact.com.
Welcome back, everybody, to Home Talk USA on the King Broadcasting Network. This is the Made in America Hour, and I'm your host, Greg Owens. It was a pleasure having Jim here to talk about his work at the Coalition for a Prosperous America. I would encourage you to look up some of those reports that he was talking about and get a copy of his book, What If Things Were Made in America Again. I think you'll find it very enjoyable, very enlightening. It's not a heavy read. And you'll probably be all fired up and want to buy American-made products after you read it. Before we get on to talking about some other issues in the news these days, I wanted to give a shout out to our sponsor for this segment, Green Products. Protect your wood from future damage with Cooper Green Wood Preservative. You can find it at greenproductsco.net. Okay, well, welcome back, everybody. And one of the things that's been in the news of late is something called the 232 steel and aluminum tariffs. It's been getting a lot of press. And this was something that was put in years ago as just a tariff on steel and aluminum. But what the administration and a lot of us advocating for American manufacturing realized was that putting a tariff on the raw materials without putting the same tariff on downstream products, for example, our silverware. So now the price of our steel goes up because we're helping our steel industry by blocking competition, and it's a supply and demand thing. You have less supply and the same amount of demand, and the price goes up a little bit. But if you don't put the corresponding protection on for the downstream products, it actually puts us at a further disadvantage. So I've been working with the Coalition for Prosperous America on getting the tariffs put not only on steel as part of the 232s, but also on the downstream products. And this is really interesting because it's something that can be done by executive order because Congress has already taken action on the 232s. And this amounts to just an extension off that and something that's going to make it stronger. Why is this important? If you go back 30, 40 years, the United States was a leader in steel production in the world. That's no longer the case. And you guessed it, China has pretty much taken over the markets. They subsidize their steel. In fact, I can tell you that in our company, our competition is buying steel for about half of the world market rate, what you'd pay in a free market economy. Because we're not competing against a free market economy, we're competing against a country that subsidizes their steel. Well, what does this do? Well, any steel products that are made have an incredible amount of value of that final product is steel. It could be 20%, is in our case. It could be 90% if it was, for example, a lead or a steel pipe or some sort of fabricated part out of steel. So it's really important to go downstream and start protecting those products as well. Otherwise, the way to circumvent the tariffs is simply to make something out of it and ship it in here with no duties at all. So this is something that is being worked on right now. And like I just said, the interesting part about it is that the legislation already exists. So they're starting out with metal fabricating. They're going to try and include our products as well. But again, why is this important? We've lost our shipbuilding industry. Okay, we've lost a lot of our structural I-beams, tubes, anything that you can make out of steel that changes from just the raw steel code to another code. a specific product code. Been working with Charles Benoit from the Coalition for a Prosperous America. They've drafted a wonderful letter on this. They've had meetings with Peter Navarro and others in the office. They've figured out how to do it the right way, the legal way that won't be challenged, and do these add-ons to the 232. So I'm really excited about this. And hopefully these items will get added and get protection, and we can start bringing the products back. Because here's the kicker. You could put tariffs on the steel, but if the steel companies here in the United States don't have customers or don't have increased business with manufacturers here in the United States, where are they going to sell their steel? They're certainly not going to export it in a world market that's flooded with steel from China that's below their cost of production. So we really need to shore this thing up. And I think they're on the right track. And hopefully this is something that you're going to be reading about in the paper coming up very shortly. I'd like to close out this hour by saying I spent the last 4 days at the International Builders Show. I'm excited to say that we met with about 28 different manufacturers. They were easy to find because I just walked the trade show and looked for American flags on the booths. And anybody who's making a product here in the United States is going to be proud of that. They're going to use that as something that they want to market. And it was very well received. I met with 28 people. I think all 28 of them were excited to be on the show. So as we've gone through this very intense period of time of politics, we try and focus on the policy, not the politics. I'm looking forward to later on this year starting to integrate more and more manufacturers so that you can hear their stories, figure out what their challenges have been, and how they plan on bringing jobs back to the United States. Next time we come back, I'll probably have an update for you on the de minimis legislation. That's something that continues to gain steam. It is very important to protecting our domestic manufacturers. But until then, we're going to have to wrap it up for this hour. This is Home Talk USA. This has been the Made in America Hour on the King Broadcasting Network. I'm your host, Greg Owens. Look forward to chatting with you all next week. Don't forget, Buy American.
From Philly to Fresno, Brooklyn to Boston, Dayton